everyone, this is Rap News Blog Animation Bliss, and welcome to another anime discussion series. Today's anime discussion we talk about today is my thoughts on the Midnight Gospel. And before I get into this, here are a few words from the channel. Hey guys, if you want to check out more content from this channel, then tune in every Sunday and Monday for new videos. And if you happen to see any videos posted up during the week, that must mean there was a bit of anime and news that we wanted to talk about. So those would be considered special videos. And if you want to chat with us on social media or see when new videos are being released, then follow us through Twitter and Facebook. And also, please feel free to join our new Facebook group, Chat with Animation Bliss, where we talk about animation with other animation fans. And now, we return to our regularly scheduled program. So The Midnight Gospel is a new Netflix anime series that was created by Duncan Trussell and Pendleton Ward, the creator of Adventure Time. And it's basically about a man named Clancy, who's a space podcaster, and he would travel to all these different planets and interview all these different beings for his podcast. And that's basically what the series is all about. So, what are my thoughts about the show so far? I thought the show was really interesting and really weird. It's probably one of the weirdest animated shows I've seen on Netflix for a long time, and it shows a lot in the surreal animation and the setup of the show. So let's talk about how the show is actually set up. So I will admit that when I watched the first episode of this series, I was a little confused about what was actually going on. Like, I was wondering about why Clancy is like talking to the president of the United States, and then you have this zombie apocalypse going on, and yet Clancy and the president don't really act like nothing's going on. They're talking about drugs throughout that whole episode. And I will admit that I was a little confused about that, because I was like, well, why is the president and Clancy just talking about drugs during this episode where there's a zombie apocalypse going on? It wasn't until I watched the second episode, which involves Clancy being turned into a mutated chicken, and he starts having an interview with this monster on the planet, and they talk about the concept of death. And then throughout that episode, Clancy and the space monster are actually being grinded up into meat, therefore they're experiencing the concept of death. And that's when I realized what the true concept of the show is all about. It's basically about Clancy interviewing all of these beings from different planets, and the dialogue that Clancy had with the people he's interviewing was actually taken from Duncan Trussell's podcast series, Duncan Trussell Family Hour, and these interviews that Clancy is having with all these beings from different planets are actually recorded reviews that Duncan Trussell has with his guests. So I thought that the narrative was really interesting, and that it's focusing on Clancy interviewing all these monsters from other planets. And I never really saw a show that had a concept like that before. Like, I never seen an anime series that took real life interviews and actually applied them to an animated series and tried to do animation around those interviews. And I found that to be really interesting and unique, because it's never been done before. And I think that this show did a pretty good job of having these real life interviews being put into animation format and doing lots of surreal animation around those interviews to make the show a little more interesting. I was also interested in some of the topics that Clancy talks about with the other beings. Like, he talks about the concept of death, he talks about drugs, he talks about religion, and I thought it was really interesting that they're able to tackle those issues, therefore making the show a lot deeper, which is really great to watch. If you like watching shows with a deeper meaning, then definitely The Midnight Gospel has a lot of that with the interviews, and I really like that setup. I also really love the bizarre animation that happens when Clancy's interviewing all these beings from different planets. It makes the show very unique, and for anybody who watched this channel, you may know that I love weird animation. And the reason why I was attracted to the show in the first place was because of the weird animation, and because it was created by Pendleton Ward, who created Adventure Time, which was a series that I really enjoyed. So I did come to the show for the weird animation, and man, did it deliver on that. There's so much weird things going on with Clancy and the guests he's interviewing. Like, you have in the first episode the zombie apocalypse, which is done in a weird animation, and then the second episode has Clancy interviewing a monster, and they're being grinded up into meat while they're still interviewing each other in that state, and I found that to be really weird. And that's what I really liked about this series so far, is that it's very weird, and the animation really encapsulates that. Now, here's some issues that I do have with the show. The only real issue that I have with the show is the narrative style. I know, I did tell you guys that I did like the narrative style. I like the fact that you have an anime series that take real life interviews and try to do animation around those interviews. But I think that that could be a detriment to the series style in a sense. Like, for example, the main reason why I was a bit confused about where the show was going in the first episode was because you have Clancy and the president talking about drugs, and yet the situation around them, the zombie apocalypse, has nothing to do with what they're talking about. Maybe if the episode featured weird animation that deals with drugs, and you have Clancy and the president talking about drugs in the same episode, it would have made more sense with the animation, and it wouldn't be so distracting. And I like the way that they handle the narrative style in the second episode, where they have Clancy and the monster talking about the concept of death, and you have them actually going through the meat grinder, therefore them going through death themselves. So it makes a lot of sense about how the animation works in that episode, since it fits well with the topic of conversation that Clancy has with his guests. And I wish that more episodes did it that way. Well, there were a couple episodes afterwards that actually took the animation style and actually molded around the topic that Clancy is talking about with his guests. But yeah, I think that if each episode has Clancy and his guests talk about a specific subject and the animation style revolves around that subject, it would make the show a lot easier to follow, and it wouldn't be so distracting with the animation clashing in with what Clancy and his guests are talking about. But overall, I really recommend you check out The Midnight Gospel. If you like weird animation in general, you'll definitely get a kick out of the show. And if you love the topics that Clancy talks about with his guests, then you'll definitely enjoy this show. Again, the only problem with this show is that sometimes the topics that Clancy discussed with his guests kind of clash with the animation itself, so be a little careful about that. Well, that's my thoughts on The Midnight Gospel, and tell me in the comments down below, have you seen The Midnight Gospel? And if you have, did you like the show? Did you hate the show? And what's your favorite animated series that has a unique narrative style? Please feel free to tell me in the comments down below. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Rabbit's Blog Animation Bliss, and I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, like this video? Then please feel free to hit that like button. And also, hit that subscribe button for more animation content from this channel. And now, roll the credits please.